Welcome, everyone, to episode 76 of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Joined alongside me is my brother, Tanner. We came off a hell of a weekend of sports. How's it hanging over there? Because I would say I've had my fair share of sports, but that's just a load of shit. I haven't had my fair share of sports. We're going to get into a whole lot of sports, but how's it hanging over there? You were in Florida. You got to see your first hockey game here.
Yeah, dude. I don't know if there is a limit for the amount of sports one can consume. Maybe there is a human limit, but we're damn sure not anywhere close to that limit. But it was a fun weekend. I went over to Florida, visited Chad in that great state of Florida, and it was fun. We went to go see the Panthers and the Bruins play, and that was really fun. First professional hockey game I've ever been to. Been to tons of Chads growing up, but that was the real deal, and it was awesome because you saw the defending the defending champs. Like the
Stanley Cup champs, Florida Panthers, just fresh off a Stanley Cup win.
It's cool because I'm not obviously growing up Cowboys fan. I haven't seen the Rangers was my first big team that I ever saw really win a championship. I don't think the Sounders count back in the day, but it's that's big really cool to go to an atmosphere of every single fan of that team is expecting to win and win by multiple goals, and there's just they've been to the Stanley Cup 2 years in a row. We're better than this, it's a superiority kind of thing just oozing from the stadium. And it was really cool. You got to see the championship banner. You got to see all the pomp and circumstance. And it was a really, really, really cool experience. And not to mention the game was awesome. It was electric.
It was an absolutely electric game that, the Panthers outshoot the Boston Bruins by over 20 shots. They almost outshot them 3 times and Boston just stayed in it. And then the Panthers got a goal at the very end of the game with 1.2 seconds left. It was a floater. Just so happened to be right in front of us. If you were watching the game, I was the jackass in the green jersey. Mm-hmm. That was me. I was the one in the green jersey. And Florida always shot. They shot against us twice, so we knew going into that game that we're going to get a lot more action being on the Boston side. But the Swayman chants, the grown men hitting on the glass, to the awesome finds that we found in the pro shop. I don't even know if it was the official pro shop of the Florida Panthers, but we were just walking down in the ground level where our seats were, and we just kind of walked into this little pro shop that we saw, and they had a bunch of pucks in there. You got a warm-up puck from the Dallas Stars because you're a Dallas Stars guy, and I ended up finding a game-used puck from 2022 with when Florida played Columbus. And just thinking back at that, just looking at that find, that puck, it's crazy because that's when, Johnny Hockey, may he rest in peace. He played for the Columbus Blue Jackets back then, and in 2022, he had a pretty solid season. And the Florida Panthers, like you were saying, they expect to win, and it's fun to be in a stadium like that because I haven't really been in a stadium like that because we didn't really go to the Rangers right after they won the World Series. Mm-hmm. We're always there way before, and when no one thought they could get there, we were there at the Rangers games whenever they got the superstar Corey Seager. Mm-hmm. And we were sitting there I wonder how this guy's going to be. Crank. Yeah, he's probably going to be pretty good. You know what I mean? But fun weekend with the Florida Panthers hockey. And then to end it off with that game, Boston wins it with 1.2 seconds, off of a goal against Bobrovsky that we thought you were going to go to your first NHL game. You got to see your first overtime, and you were 2 seconds away from seeing your first shootout. But hell of a weekend in sports. That's all the hockey talk we got for this episode. We're going in football like always. If you're watching us on YouTube, you see we got a bunch of playoffs going this week. We're going to jump right into the wild card round. We got to start it off with the Texans and the Chargers. Texans absolutely mauled the Chargers. Just absolutely mauled the Chargers. And I'm going to just start it off by saying it was a bit of the Chargers shooting themselves in the foot. This is a season that was really good for the Chargers and something that you would like to hang your hat on prior to this game. And then Justin Herbert goes out there and does not play like Justin Herbert. I mean, I think he had 4 interceptions. He had 3 all season. That's the stat that you told me. I mean, you don't see that happen. And unfortunately for the Chargers, they got sent packing. But what did you see in that Houston Chargers game? I mean, I didn't see an overly impressive performance on the Houston side. And not to mention, now they get to go play Kansas City this week. But let's finish the season off, talking about the Chargers and talking about all these teams that got eliminated in the wild card round. You're up with the Chargers.
It's it, it's pretty much like you said, where it's the Chargers, them shooting themselves in the foot. Herbert's 4 interceptions, like that's just not a winning formula. You look at his past performance in the playoffs where they went up in that big lead at half, right? A couple years back, and then Jacksonville comes storming back, and you just can only like think of that. When you think of this game, it's like, okay, well, Herbert has had 2 chances now, or in arguably a game that he can win. I would say this time against Houston. Again, another AFC South
Good
opponent.
points
Funny
for
enough,
sure.
but he just didn't look good. He didn't look good at all. He made bad throws, very uncharacteristic throws, and it almost seemed at a point Houston was just letting him throw, right? And Houston's, I mean, Derek Stingley, if I'm not mistaken, we'll go over it in the All Pro segment later here in the next segment, but I want to say he's an All Pro, and he showed it. He definitely showed it. That secondary looked humming, and they just got to Herbert, got him pressure, stopped the run game, and made him, forced him to make bad decisions. I think the one thing, if you're a Chargers fan coming out of that game, maybe 2 things, but the big thing for me is Lad McConkey is a guy. That's a dude that's going to be on your team for the next however many years, and you're going to sign him to a second deal after his rookie contract is up. And I don't see a world in which he leaves LA, the Chargers, that is, because it's just he was the bright spot on that offense. They got it going a little bit, but it just wasn't enough. Like I said, 4 turnovers, that's not going to win you a game. And CJ, he played all right. He played like normal CJ, I'd say, around this season. But when your defense is putting up that amount of points, you don't really have to do a whole lot. You don't have to go out and make big throws. And honestly, you probably shouldn't, because if you're having a season like CJ had, there's probably a little bit of doubt in a lot of those throws that he is making to a lot of unfamiliar receivers. We'll put it like that. So in a game where you're up big, your defense is playing well, ride them and just continue to ride that momentum. And that's exactly what the Texans did. Hopefully, they can bring it into KC next week, start real strong, get that defense going, and hopefully we can just get like a defensive battle and something that'll be super fun for this upcoming weekend. But it was a lot of just, like you said, the Chargers making mistakes. But I will say that the Chargers with a new head coach, pretty much a lot of new players, especially on that offense, like that's a W. You go into the playoffs, you get into the playoffs you weren't expecting to after the season that they had last year, and you get into the playoffs. Sure, you get bounced first round, but there's a lot to hang your hat on for the season. And I think Herbert's going to continue to get better. You saw him this year, and hopefully in the future he gets matures enough and doesn't make those mistakes with this game under his belt. So I think it's a good learning experience for Herbert, and it was awesome that the Chargers. It was unfortunate that the Chargers had an end to the season like this, but I'd say you can still hang your hat on that season as a whole, because it's going to be a working process for Harbaugh and getting that whole thing going. And if this is what he's doing in the first season, I'm super excited as a fan seeing what's coming next.
Well, and there's just not a whole lot you can do as a coach, as a game planner when you have, I mean, even over 2 turnovers. You know what I mean? That could be 14 potential points, not to mention 28 potential points off of turnovers. You know what I mean? And also when you're throwing the ball and you're down, or when you're down, what happens? You have to continue to throw that ball when you're down.
Mm-hmm.
So the Chargers were fighting a losing battle the whole time, just like most teams do in the playoffs when you're down by big, unless you're Tom Brady. But the thing about that game was a lot of that game was within 1 to 2 possessions. And then, at the very end, it kind of went awry. That was a tough word to say there for a second. For the Chargers. And for me, it's something, it's like, yes, it was a successful season. You don't necessarily, going into this season, you didn't necessarily know that the Chargers were going to be a playoff team. You kind of hoped that they would be. But yeah, I mean, Harbaugh did really great things in his first year, aside from this game. Like, this is quite literally the only blemish. I mean, yes, there was losses, like they didn't go undefeated, but this is the only blemish that I am going to look at this season. And when you look back at the game, you go, what happened? And you go look at the play, and you hate to throw guys under the bus, but it was all Justin Herbert. And when you have bad games in the playoffs, it's magnified because there's no other games on. Everybody's watching that game. And, this weekend, man, I was stoked for a lot of these games, and a lot of these games were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
They were just not very good football games. But the divisional round's coming up. We're gonna talk about that. Anyway, Texans, you're going in to meet Kansas City. We're gonna hit that next. Steelers and Ravens. I mean, Steelers only lost that game 14-28. Like that was a close game. It didn't seem like it was that close. That game seemed like it was a 50-point difference the entire game with the way that the Steelers and the Ravens were playing. But for me, what'd you see in that game? Because there's a lot to kind of take off there.
I saw the Ravens play bully ball, like really. I just saw them control the pace of play with Derrick Henry doing a really
Against Steelers.
Against the Steelers, whose defense
Bully ball.
has looked meh past like 5 or 6 weeks. I think a stat that is really important. I think it was like their Steelers are now 0-5 to end this season, including that playoff game, and the 4 at the end of the year. So they had a really tough schedule, and it only got tougher in the playoffs. And them not winning division was, I think, the biggest part because they got to go on the road. They got to go play the Ravens at home. And the Ravens coming off a win earlier in that season against the Steelers, it's hard to gain momentum, and especially with the people that they played. But if they can somehow find that glory that they had mid-season, early season, then this would be a completely different story in this game. But they looked like they were struggling pretty much on every single part, in that game. Russell Wilson didn't look that good. He was sailing balls. George Pickens really wasn't that involved, and he caught that touchdown, which was good. But a lot of times through that game, I'm like, where's like the dominant force that got this team to the playoffs? Like, why is this team in the playoffs? You watch it and you're like, what? Sure, they have a bunch of wins, but like, what are they doing that shows that they're a playoff football team? Right? You look at how Washington played. You look how Jaden Daniels played, and you're like, that's a playoff team right there. You look at Baltimore, you look at Buffalo, you look at KC, all of these guys, and heck, a couple guys in the NFC as well. But you look at it and you say, like, those are playoff teams. But you look at the Steelers and how they played those last 5 weeks, and they looked abysmal. They couldn't get their offense going, and it was a large part because of, teams that are playing were good, but it's a lot of just missed opportunities, missed plays, missed throws, missed assignments on blocks and stuff like that. I would have loved to see them get Najee going a little bit more, but this is just what the Steelers have become the past couple of years, past like 5 or so years. They get to the playoffs and something just happens, something just clicks in their brain and nothing happens, So I love Tomlin. I don't think he should be out or anything like that, but I do think there should be a question at the quarterback position moving forward, because you look at that and you're like, yeah, they have a good roster. George Pickens should stay there. He can be a number one. Imagine if he had like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen throwing to him. Like this would be disgusting. George Pickens would be a really, really good receiver. So I want to see another quarterback. I know another one, but hopefully they can go draft one. They can go get one in free agency, but I don't know if Russell Wilson's the answer because he really hadn't show you anything against good talent. So, but I'm kind of just bashing on the Steelers, but I think the Ravens kind of had their way with it. They really could do anything they want. Lamar looked amazing as usual, but that was this is the team that Lamar's had struggles against in the regular season, and the fact that he can play them in the playoffs and absolutely destroy them, that's going to be a big confidence builder and booster moving forward. So, I looked for the Steelers to change some things on offense, maybe some coordinators, maybe some coaches. I think Tomlin's still staying there, but I don't love what I was seeing. I think the defense just kind of hit a wall at a point. I think TJ's dealing with something that that he's not disclosing, because he just didn't look like the same TJ we've seen in recent memory. But they bullied him straight up. They bullied him, and that was kind of that decided the game. I mean, Derrick Henry, he's the king for a reason. So.
The king continues to run over quite literally everybody, and yeah, like you said, they did against the Steelers. And excuse me, my thing is that this is a division opponent. This is an opponent that you see often, right? This is an opponent that you're not like. Mike Tomlin's a guy that doesn't get like out coached.
He got out coached.
Yeah, I would argue this one he got out coached. Like maybe I wasn't into it as much last year, watching it, and maybe because it's the fact that the podcast is here and everything, but like for me, that doesn't happen to Mike Tomlin. Mm-hmm. And so for me, after that game specifically, I do have a little bit more questions, but at the same time, it's like we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and you said it, there's a lot more questions and answers with the Steelers, and that just continues to be the same message, and that's going to continue to be the same message throughout the offseason. And unfortunately, They made the playoffs and got bounced in the first round, which means that their draft pick is going to be in the 20s. So like, or 19 to that range. So it's like you're not going to have your chance at that, that blue chip prospect. Steelers, I don't see them trading up to go get, these guys in the draft. Now at the same time, you have a year that, if Cam Ward doesn't go number 1 overall, the quarterback out of Miami, there's a lot of question marks for who could potentially take that number 1 spot. And this is a year where you don't have a clear-cut number 1 quarterback, a Trevor Lawrence, right? Like a guy that's like, oh, he's going number 1. You know what I mean? Like, he's going number 1. They don't have that this year. And you have a kid that's probably going to be a hybrid player between a cornerback and a wide receiver that's going to make that number 1 pick in the NFL draft with Travis Hunter. But with the Steelers, they're not going to have that opportunity. Now, absolutely do not get rid of Tomlin. In my opinion, that would be as stupid as like when Tennessee let Vrabel go just out of nowhere. And the players were like, what the hell's going on? Like, what's going on here? That was not the problem. And it was very clear that he was not the problem. Look at the roster. You know what I mean? Look at everybody else that they had at Tennessee in that point. But with the Steelers, true. With the Steelers, you have a roster that is a lot of veterans on that roster. And some skill positions are young guys. But you nailed the biggest point of this, quarterback. Steelers, I could see a team. I mean, they went and got Russ. They went and got Justin Fields in the offseason. What happens in Minnesota with Sam Darnold? What happens with all these quarterbacks that could potentially be going? Hell, Cooper Rush in Dallas. Like, every year, some guys get taken. And you're like, I don't know how that's going to work out. Then you have a Geno Smith in Seattle, and you're like, shit, that worked. That's good. You know what I mean? So I could see something like that happening with Pittsburgh because no. Absolutely not. Russ is not the guy. No, he throws a hell of a deep ball, And in the beginning of the season, he looked like flashes of Russ. But I don't know. I don't know. Seattle looks like geniuses for walking away from him. And then Justin Fields, no disrespect to Justin Fields. Maybe he didn't get the opportunity that he should have gotten in that game to go, but the lack of offensive production and just the constant stops, I would have liked to see him in a little bit more packages. But again, I'm a couch warrior, and Mike Tomlin is going to continue to be a Steeler for a long time. They've had like 4 coaches in their entire history, folks. They're not going to be changing these guys on the fly, I don't think. I don't believe that rumor for a second. Then we go on to the Sunday games. We had the Bills destroy the Broncos 31-7. Hey, when we're wrong, we're wrong. We thought Bo Nix was going to kind of go out there and kind of have his show and have his cake and eat it too. And rookie in the playoffs, rookie traveling in the playoffs. That's, hey, maybe we put a little bit too much into that. But my thing with the Broncos, and I'll start us off here, and I want to get your take on this. I mean, it was just so much going on. Just so much going on. So many plays where it was like, why are you not just throwing to the open receiver? To me, it almost looked like it was just too much. Like, I'm not saying Bo Nix is not enough for the bright lights, but I'm saying the play calling, you could see Sean Payton on the sideline, like, yelling. And now, given that was toward the end of the game at one of his coaches, and, it's football, hockey, it's the same shit. But, to me, that was a horrible game. A horrible game. And you said it going into it, hey, they played with house money. They didn't expect to be there. Okay, but let's hope that doesn't ever happen again in the playoffs. Because that was ugly. That was the Cowboys of last year. Every year in the wild card round, somebody gets destroyed, and it was the Chargers that started it off, but the Bills came in and said, "Not today. We got this. We're going to take the biggest ass kicking," and they did. What'd you see with this Bills team other than, just solid performances on both sides of the ball, specifically with James Cook is starting to cook.
You give him the rock in the playoffs, and he's gonna do some he's gonna pull some magic. He's been that type of player all year. You just kind of give him the rock, and everyone's like, "Oh, Josh Allen." It's like, hey, we got a stud back here at running back too. We got a guy that can absolutely break a defense and just, ground and pound, wear down a defense over the course of the game, and that's what they did. And I was saying coming into this game, I want James. This is how you play playoff football. You get the ball on the ground with your running backs and let them go to work. So Josh Allen can do whatever the heck he wants, right? Because I promise you this is going to be the same formula next round against the Ravens. They're going to go in there, or they're going to sit at home. They're going to wait for the Ravens to come, and then they're going to give James Cook the ball. If the first play is not a James Cook run, I'd be kind of surprised, genuinely. So obviously the Bills are the Bills, but I think the big thing too is, like you said, like that Bills defense, given the injuries that they had at the beginning of the season, I think that they're playing outstanding right now. I think that they are playing kind of like, on top of their head with the goalie, like you talk about in hockey. They're just got a lot of confidence in themselves right now. They kind of seem like they have a chip on their shoulder, because no one's really counting the Bills defense to go out there and do this. It's like, okay, yeah, Steelers defense, Ravens defense, line, it's like, okay, like Philadelphia's defense, everyone's like, okay, yeah. But like everyone's kind of counting out the Bills defense. And I think they're taking that a little bit to heart. And I think that they're playing really, really good football. But I will say too, with the Broncos, they were able to get, that first drive was awesome. Bo Nix with the deep ball, wide open. That was awesome. Great start to the game. But there really wasn't anything after that. You saw them get some offensive production here and there on a couple drives, but they just couldn't sustain a drive. They really they got out coached in general, and they just didn't have to. The Bills didn't have to do much. It's a similar story for a lot of these other teams. It's not do too much. Let your defense give you the win, and go on to the next round. It really was that simple for a lot of these teams. They kind of relied on their defense to be the bullies, and it kind of it made it look easy. It made it easy to play call on the offensive side of the ball because your defense was just controlling the game. You can really call whatever the heck you want. And that play, from Josh Allen at like I don't know, you and I were like, I don't even know how that's a touchdown with the guy like on the ground and he's just like, oh, give me the ball, like across for that Bills touchdown. But fantastic. Like Josh Allen, he played really well. And he had a couple balls that sailed on him in that game. I don't think that's the best we've seen Josh Allen, and I don't think it's the best we're going to see these playoffs. But excellent warm-up game for him. Unfortunately, it was against the Broncos, but Broncos got a long way to go. We know that. And like I said, I think it's awesome that they were there and that they kind of put up a little bit of a fight, right? I will say, too, I know Bo Nix was dealing with some back injuries that came out after that game. Just a lot of like fractures and stuff in his back, and he just shoot him up with drugs and get him in that game because that's your first playoff game ever. And
that's total.
Yeah, so I given the circumstances, again, like you still got to hang your hat on this season. Yes, you got destroyed in the playoffs, but it's against a potential Super Bowl, competitor, right? We expect the Bills to go far in these playoffs, and a loss like that is not something to be super duper sad about. Right. So again, congrats to the Broncos, but like, it is what it is. Bo Nix is going to get better, and they got Sean Payton right there, and Sean Payton's not going to let that happen again. I promise you, he will not let that happen again in the playoffs. So he's just one of those guys. We'll see what happens later on, but I like what they got going over there in Denver, and I don't know what the whole salary cap thing is, but next year they might actually have money to play with, not with this whole Russell Wilson contract thing still looming over that organization. So hopefully they get him some good guys. Like this was like a 3/4 of a roster that they put together, and they made the playoffs. So there's a lot of room to grow. We'll put it like that. But Buffalo Bills move on, and I don't want to play there. If I'm any team in the NFL, I don't want to play in Buffalo. I get it, KC, but I don't want to play in Buffalo. It's just that's a tough place to play. Broncos, I don't know, but Ravens are going to go in there. It's going to be interesting. We'll talk about it in the next segment, but Buffalo's starting to become one of those places in the playoffs you do not want to travel to because it's
unless you're
Mahomes.
Yeah, literally not to mention unless you're one of the GOATs. Or the fact of like it's fucking Buffalo, dude. In January. What do you the guys in the parking lots are breaking tables. Just jumping off of stuff, breaking tables in sub-zero temperatures. They're paying fans. They're showing up with shovels. Mm-hmm. They're shoveling snow out of the seats. Like this isn't a place you want to go. No, this is absolutely not a place you want to go. And fortunately for Kansas City, they're probably going to win. I'd be shocked if CJ takes out Mahomes. They don't got to go there. You know what I mean? So right now, Buffalo, this is the last home game unless they win and somehow Houston wins, then they get to host an AFC championship. Actually, no, wouldn't Houston would host the AFC championship.
Buffalo
No,
still
Buffalo,
takes it.
they're the higher seed.
Yeah,
Because they're the higher seed.
The only one that has to lose is KC.
That's right, because they're the 2 seed. The Texans are the 4 seed. Hell, if the Texans beat the Chiefs, they should be able to host it. I'm sorry. It's like you just give them a mulligan on that one. You know what I mean?
It'd be interesting if you could steal seeds in the NFL. Some organizations, some competitions do that, where if you beat the number 1 seed, you become the number 1 seed, which is kind of fun. But
that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's a good look on it, good little take on it. But the Broncos, you have a season that your rookie quarterback completely overexcelled. You have a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix that didn't get taken first, that didn't get taken second. You know what I mean? Like if you have a quarterback that you're seeing, you're like, we really like this guy. We think he's going to be there, but we don't know. And then all of a sudden, he just kind of falls in your lap. Whether or not it was their guy or not, the Broncos have had abysmal success at drafting quarterbacks as of late. I mean, one of the worst in the NFL aside from Cleveland.
Yep.
But Cleveland had more success because they let Baker go. The Broncos haven't had success. They brought in Peyton Manning, the last guy they drafted. Good luck, not John Lynch, but Paxton Lynch. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like Brock Osweiler. Like, sorry, like that's not, it's not going to cut it. But you have a kid in Bo Nix that you can build around. You have a receiver in Courtland Sutton that's like, okay, I understand why they let Judy walk. I mean, this is a true number 1. Now, I would have really liked to have Sutton and Judy on that team, but still, you'll see what happens. And Sean Payton is not afraid to go get some guys. And we've seen that throughout his career, most of his time being in New Orleans. So for me, good season to hang your hat on. You're going to get another draft under your belt. You're going to get more free agents under your belt. And honestly, bright times with Denver looking forward. Bright times. You've got the Packers that played the Eagles. The Packers laid an absolute egg, 10-22. You should just take off the 1. It was practically 0. I mean, that was not a good game by the Packers. And honestly, it wasn't that good of a game by the Eagles. Saquon did not do a ton in that game. A.J. Brown was reading a book on the sidelines. And, not a whole lot happened on the Eagles side, but they did what they had to do and they won the game. And clearly they were the better team there. And Jordan Love, that's an interesting one. Because you look at the recent success that he hasn't had, you're like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of questions that come into Jordan Love. Is he gone next season? No. He's shown you way too much to be gone next season. I would think that Green Bay would be one of the biggest destinations, or I would hope, if I was Jordan Love, would be one of the biggest destinations for whoever the heck the top free agent wide receiver is, because they don't have a true number 1 and they haven't had a true number 1 since Devontae Adams left. And Jordan Love is a guy that can get you the ball. But how often? How many times is it going to look like that Jordan Love? You know what I mean? And you never like to say that when you have quarterbacks, but watching the Cowboys so much, you've got one version of Dak, and then you've got another version of Dak. Right now, I think you've got one version of Jordan, then you got another version of Jordan. You know what I mean? This weekend, there was missed throws. I mean, I get it, the receiving core is depleted, but I mean, like a lot of missed throws. The throws that were on target was just not the greatest. You know what I mean? Just it didn't. The first throw of the game was like, oh no. You know what I mean? Like there was just so many plays that you were just like, this does not look like Jordan Love right now. So maybe he's battling something too. A lot of guys are at this time. Again, depleted wide receiver core, but the offseason's key for the Packers, I think. The offseason, the draft is pretty key for the Packers, and there's a lot of good receivers in this draft. And for me, if I'm the Packers, I am prioritizing a wide receiver in the first round. Now, given they're later on in the first round, not in the beginning, but you've seen a lot of wide receiver success. So Packers not, a lot. This one's a lot of questions as well, but we'll see how Jordan Love starts next season. They got Josh Jacobs. They got pieces there. They need to continue to upgrade that offensive line, continue to add pieces on that defense because the pass rush is solid at times. So I wouldn't necessarily say you're looking down in Green Bay, but kind of just like okay, let's see what we got next season, not to mention everybody else in that division. What do you got on the Packers?
I think what a lot of people got to remember is, Jordan Love didn't have the success that we've kind of seen him have, especially in the playoffs, and just in the regular season, just in general. But it, this is a really young team. You got to consider that, especially the offense, specifically the offense. They traded away, I think Preston Smith, which was like their oldest player, right? And
He's on the defensive side.
he was, but just in general with that defense is pretty young too. But um, the offense is stupid young. You look at it and it's like, okay, Jordan Love, okay, Romeo Dobbs, okay, Jaden Reed, okay, Josh Jake. Like you look at in the alignment too, so it's like, wow, okay, this team doesn't really have a lot of experience just in general. Obviously Jordan's been sitting for a while, but he doesn't have a whole lot. Like he's got 2 seasons under his belt now. What, 3 playoff games as a whole, and 2 of which he played really well in. And this is his first really big disappointment on the Packers. In the playoff records for the Packers. So I don't know. I wouldn't count him out at all. I think that they just need more time. Get a lot more familiar with the system and just continue to get better and better. Get more guys in there. These guys get better and better every year. And we didn't even know they don't have a true number one. Like you were saying, it's Romeo Dobbs, it's Jaden Reed, it's Tucker Kraft, it's whoever catches the ball. It doesn't really matter. Like Jordan's just slinging it down there. He doesn't really care who's down there. So I wouldn't count this team out by any margin. But that being said, it's not a good look. When your quarterback goes out there and he throws he gave Justin Herbert a run for his money, and it's really not a good look when you go out there and you spot the defense, or if you spot the Eagles 7 points right off the back with a fumble on the kick return. That looks like you and me playing Madden, where you just got a guy running downhill and just hit him as hard as you can, and the ball pops out. And it's like, you're not winning football games when you do that. That's just, it's not a thing that's going to happen. So Eagles turn around, have 1 or 2 play drive to AJ Brown, open the scoring. It's like, all right, let's get this playoff started right. And after that, the Eagles just didn't really do a whole ton. And funny enough, at one point in this game, it was 10-16 with Packers with the ball, having a chance to go down and take the lead. And they didn't. They didn't do it at all. And I think that's just a testament to how good that Philadelphia defense has been and how good it's going to be in these playoffs. They look stupid, and they just kind of reloaded that defense on a single offseason. Now, the big thing, too, is they're not going to have their starting linebacker with Nakobe Dean. I think he's out for the year now, so they're going to have to get some depth in that position. And he's been really coming on this year after his big injury that his rookie season, and he's starting to work back up. But I really hope he's not like an injury-prone linebacker or anything like that, because he's fantastic. He's super talented, and he can run that defense really well. So hopefully he can get back, but they're not going to be without him for the rest of the playoffs, which is tough on the probably the NFL's best defense. So curious to see how they moving forward. I'm going to sit here and say it's not a surprise. I don't think a whole lot of people were surprised that the Eagles won in the way that they did, with dominating defense. So looks good, and Philly's probably going to continue to roll. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, the Commanders barely edge out the Buccaneers 23-20. We asked the question last week, does Jaden Daniels go out and get his first playoff win? And he did. Baker Mayfield, you nailed it. The other version kind of showed up in that game, but at the same time, he had good plays at times. You can't say that was a bad game. The run he had in that game was absurd. Like, that was just taking on 4 or 5 defenders and then just running right up the middle of the field. Like, even running backs don't do that a whole lot. You know what I mean? It's like Baker's just initiating contact, going right in for it. But it was the best game of the weekend. And of course it was, the second to last game of the weekend. So we had to wait for it. But Commanders went out there and did what they had to do when they needed to do it. And Jaden looks good. We know Jaden Daniels is a guy that is as advertised. And in the playoffs, the biggest question was, what does he do in the playoffs? Well, it's the same guy. He's not disappearing at all. But on the Buccaneers side, you have Mike Evans, who hit the milestone with Jerry Rice's consecutive receiving yard seasons. You didn't have Chris Godwin pretty much all season. That division is, I'm not going to say a layup, but you've got a pretty solid chance to go back next year and win that division just with the roster you have right now, depending upon how big of a step Michael Penix Jr. makes in Atlanta, because I don't think Kirk's going to stay there. So the Buccaneers right now, I don't think it's a failure. I think they would have liked to win one more game, and then I think you could have called it success. But I know this team, won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady a couple years ago. I understand that, but I don't know if Baker Mayfield's going to be the guy to get it done. I don't know, because unfortunately in this game he could have got like a I'm not going to say a good quarterback, because Baker's a good quarterback, but like, I don't know, if the roles are reversed, I don't think that game's close if Jaden's on the Buccaneers side. Like I don't think it's close. Like that game, Jaden clearly looked like the better quarterback, clearly made the better throws. And, every throw that wasn't to Mike Evans, points kind of seemed off. But at the same time, it's playoffs. A lot's going on in those playoff games. And Washington, to me, flat out, man, I don't want to say it, but it seemed like they wanted it more. Like, it just looked like they wanted it more. It looked like they were fighting more for their head coach. I don't know. It just looked like they wanted it more. They fought for it more on every play. It kind of seemed like defensive side and offensive side of the ball. I don't know. Washington's got a swag right now that's unfortunate when your favorite team's the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East. Like that, it's unfortunate the swagger they got going right now. But the Buccaneers, who knows what they're going to do in the offseason, because they'll go out and do pretty much anything if it means to get farther in the playoffs. And they're going to come back. Bucky Irving's going to come back and not be a rookie and probably be the full-time starter. You're going to have Mike Evans again. That's going to try to break the record now. Jerry Rice, you're going to have Chris Godwin again. You know what this team is. Let's see what they do drafting. Let's see what free agents they make, because, like I said, I do think this team probably is number one, if not number two, at the absolute worst in their division next year. Bucks, shake and bake? What do you think?
This was the quintessential game, I'd say, to describe Baker Mayfield. And just in the playoffs, like I said, coming into this week, you got two versions of him. Go back and take a look last week's episode, and I explained it a whole lot better there, but you can't turn the ball over on your own 20-yard line. You just can't. Not in a critical situation like that. In my opinion, that was the biggest play in the game. That's the point in the game when it started to turn. Because you had Baker, he had that drive, go down, touchdown to Mike Evans. It's like, dang, that ball was quick. That might have shot Mike Evans' head off if he didn't catch it. It looked like he was in his bag. It looked like Baker was playing well, and Washington goes down, wins it with a field goal at the very end. And when they punt that ball back, or when Washington gets that ball back, are you not immediately in your head thinking, this thing's over?
I did.
Yeah, Jaden's got a game-winning drive. He's got very little time left on the clock. All they got to do is go down and get a field goal. Are you kidding me? So Bucks didn't play that end of game very well, I think, just in general, and obviously that turnover with Baker you cannot have in the playoffs ever, really. And that's a lot of self-inflicted wounds, a lot of spotting teams' points, and that's just not going to get it done. So I thought Jaden played really, really well. I thought that he had some throws that he could have had back, but overall he's the style of player that he is, the type of player that he is, allows him, I think, to succeed in these big moments. Like we said with Lamar, that's the biggest comparison to him right now. And you can kind of see it. I remember we were watching that game, and it got to a point where you could see Jaden. He had his receivers kind of on the line of scrimmage, and he was getting ready to scramble. But, he wanted his guys to be in front of him to get some blockers. So, he's directing him. He's pointing out, go over there, come on. And he has the ball. Meanwhile, he's just running around the field, get downfield so I can run. So it's a very unique offense, and it's very cool the way that he's kind of taking very much, obviously he's a quarterback. He's going to take leadership, but he's doing everything right. He's dotting his I's, he's crossing his T's, and even he's putting it in new fonts, and he's learning calligraphy. He's doing above and beyond for this team right now. And I think that this is fantastic because he looked amazing, I'll say, in that playoff game. And you don't have rookies go in there and play that well. I mean, again, with Bo Nix, but that's a tough Tampa team. You're going into Tampa playing away with these guys. You're a rookie quarterback. You've never done this before. The spotlight is the biggest. You had the Sunday night game. They knew this was going to be the game. So the fact that he is just cool, calm, and collected throughout that entire thing and delivers a game-winning drive just right on top, given all the things that have happened this season and those close games. I saw a stat that was Washington won this game, or Washington won this season like 8 times or something like that, with like 0 seconds on the clock. Like they had like plays on 0 seconds that won them the game. Obviously, the Hail Mary and many field goals. So Washington's a unit right now, and would they go and play Detroit? It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. We'll hit it in the next segment, but that's gonna be a good game, and I think we're gonna be seeing Jaden in these playoffs for the foreseeable future. And it's gonna be tough, but Dallas is gonna have to work with not one but now 2 franchise quarterbacks that are very good dual threats as well in their own division. So that's gonna be fun moving forward. And Jaden Daniels, I think, is just the new era of Lamar Jackson's that's going to be coming out. Lamar inspired, I think, an entire generations of quarterbacks, and I think Jaden is like, you're going to start seeing a lot more of guys like him come in and start succeeding, because I mean he's now proven that you can kind of run that type of offense in the NFL, kind of that run first kind of quarterback run as well, and he's an excellent passer with Terry McLaurin on the end too. So, but can't give him enough credit. He's been fantastic so far, and he continues to get better. And I don't know how it's possible. You're playing in a playoff game. You'd think you'd get a little worse. No, he's like at the top of this game. It's like the best we've seen him all year. And the kid has
just
played
continues
16 games.
continues to excel. Won a Heisman, comes in and just and continues to do what he's done at the college level. And that's the biggest question mark, is like the step up. What happens with these guys, especially at the quarterback position, at the wide receiver position? Like, the speed is so much greater in the NFL. Like, what happens with these guys? And Jaden has taken every single lick, no matter what, and it's been completely fine. And you had some question marks in the middle of the season with this Washington team, but I don't think you do anymore. Moving on to the last game of the wild card round, then we're going to jump into the divisional round. Vikings 9, Rams 27. A lot of people picked the Vikings in this game. A lot of people thought that Sam Darnold was going to kind of not have a performance like he did the week before. And unfortunately, Sam Darnold had the performance like he did the week before. And you said it last week, Patty Pafford just goes out there. Do not give him a shot. Mm-hmm. Don't give him a shot, especially don't give him a game where he can win. And not to mention Cooper Kupp. He hasn't had this guy, Puka Nacua, for a hell of a long time. You know what I mean? Only a couple of years at this point. So you have, not to mention Williams with the running back. So you have so many good pieces on that Rams team with the playoff success that they've had as of late. I mean, just the perfect storm for the Vikings, who just fell apart at the end of this season. I mean, just fell apart. They lost to Detroit. You felt like that was the game right there. You felt like that was the game, and that you watch that game and you're like, it didn't look too good. You know what I mean? And then Vikings come into the playoffs and just 9 points in a playoff game. That's not good. And I know we said, we're talking about Sam Darnold being the guy. I don't know anymore, because what do you do? I mean, for me, if I'm the Vikings, I want to bring him back. I'm pretty sure his contract's up. I want to bring him back on like another 1-year deal, and then have him and JJ McCarthy just kind of go, because you see why a team like the Atlanta Falcons drafted Michael Penix Jr. after getting a Kirk Cousins. Kirk kind of fell off a cliff, and they were like, hey, we got a guy. You know what I mean? We already got a guy. But that's a tough one. And there's a lot of questions there. Now, depending upon the contract, we'll see what happens in the offseason with Minnesota. But you've got JJ McCarthy, who you drafted. So all year, all he did was sit and learn because he was injured. So he just went to all the meetings, did all that stuff, just soaked all that knowledge in. Michigan guy, came from, the coach that he came from, now is into the NFL. Like, who knows? I think, next year we could potentially see JJ McCarthy at some point in the season, if not, relatively early on, because of these Sam Darnold recent struggles. And I get it. It's against Detroit. I get it. It's against the Rams. But to be a quarterback and to have that roster that Minnesota has, specifically at the wide receiver position, there's not a whole lot of excuses there. There's not a whole lot of excuses there, in my opinion, because you have, to me, the best wide receiver. Him and Jamar Chase are a toss-up, and then you have another toss-up between the best number 2 in the league. So, with Jordan Addison. Vikings, good luck. because again, that division and the Detroit is going absolutely nowhere, and you already kind of know what the Packers' floor is, but you have no clue what Minnesota's floor is. No clue. What do you got on the Vikings?
It, it's at the beginning of the year, I was kind of, I don't know if I was seeing the future, a little bit, but at the beginning of the year, I
We
kind of
tend to.
was saying with the Vikings, when is this chariot going to turn back into a pumpkin? That's when I was thinking, when are we going to see the Sam Darnold that we've been seeing the past 4 or 5 years? Like when is this success going to stop? And unfortunately, it came in the last, past 2 weeks with Minnesota losing that game against Detroit and them, going the same next week, not getting the first round bye and losing in the wild card round to the Rams. And I think it's funny too. You look at the games that they've lost this year, and they've lost to 2 games to Detroit and 2 games to the Rams. And who did you see these last 2 weeks? Detroit and the Rams. So it's a tough beat. Unfortunately, it just kind of happened that way. If they had played someone else first round in the playoffs, would something have changed? I don't know. Their defense or their offense was horrendously bad in that game, and like you said, they have so much talent. Especially with I think Christian Darrisaw has had a fantastic year. Where the heck was he? Why are they giving up 9 sacks in a playoff game? What the heck are we doing? Some of that was Sam Darnold's fault. I'll give it to you, but some of that was just really, really bad protection up front. And you got to give the credit to the Rams for being able to cause that much pressure and get Sam Darnold seeing ghosts again. So, not a whole lot on this, but what do you do if you're this front office with such a horrendous end to the season, for the Minnesota Vikings? I don't know. Luckily, I don't make those decisions, but you got a young guy just sitting waiting, and you have a unproven Sam Darnold at this point. Unproven, has won pretty much nothing in the biggest moments of his career. He goes up this past game against Detroit. That was the biggest moment in his career. This game against the Rams, that was now his biggest moment, and he looked terrible. He looked really, really bad. There were throws in there that he should have had back. He had some success on offense, but it was very limited. So a couple turnovers, whatever. Just not a good look, man.
He did sign a 1-year deal for $10 million, so he is up at the end of this year. So you do have to sign him.
That's what I'm saying. Like, but what do you do? Like, what do you continue bring him back? How much do you pay him? Do you let?
I think you just nailed it. I think you might have just nailed the agent's number one thing. He's going to say, "We only had 4 losses. They were only 2 teams."
Yeah, but one of them's in your division, and you will play 2 times again. You will.
I'm not signing Sam Darnold to a massive contract or a multi-year contract, to be completely honest. I'll eat some money and sign him to a 1-year if you have that many questions.
But like,
and JJ McCarthy.
When do the questions become answers? You just got a full season of Sam Darnold under your belt, and the only teams that he beat were teams that they should have beaten. Right? They didn't. They went out there and they should have beat the Rams. Let's be honest. They went out there and they had the better roster, in my opinion, and they should have won. But they didn't, because Sam Darnold did not put them in a position to win that game. Play calling was whatever. You saw O'Connell after the game. He's like, could I have called more plays, better plays? Yeah, a little bit, but I think to a degree he got out coached, but I didn't see a whole lot from Sam Darnold that I really, really liked. So I want to see, and not to mention that it was against the team that slaughtered him last time too, and he went up and put up a worse performance. So you can tell against a team. But this is a rant against a team that had, I don't even know how many days of practice in a stadium that they had to go to in a home playoff game. Like, the Rams weren't even at home, and they still destroyed the Vikings. So the Vikings had all week. They had so much time and so many opportunities to prepare for this game, and they just lay an egg like that against a team that is currently, has fires running through the entire state. And the Rams are like, yeah, we'll put up 30. It's all good. Stafford just comes out there and looks vintage. And I get it. That's just Stafford. It's what he does. But I think you got to be able to at least match them on offense, considering what talent. One of the best receivers in the NFL, one of the best youngest receivers in Jordan Addison. And like, you got you got your guys back. You got your offensive line. It's Aaron Jones. Like
Top
where
5 tight end.
where what? Yeah, where was all of that? Where was the play calling? Where was the scheming up good routes for Addison and for Jefferson? I thought they played well when the ball was
I,
thrown to them accurately,
I
but
think
that
that
was rare.
I think that a lot. I think that you nailed it right there. I think that the quarterback play of that game was the big. I cannot put that game on the head coach.
No,
Like, look, I understand you got blown out, and yes, you could have called a better game for sure.
9 sacks
But
though.
you watch those throws;
It's
they
like a
were 4
record.
feet behind Justin Jefferson. I mean, you saw Justin when he was after the last throw in third quarter. He was just like, and you don't see Justin like that's a playoff game, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "What, dude? Like, just give me a chance, and I'll get it. Anywhere near me, I'll get it."
He will
But he
catch it.
wasn't getting anywhere near.
That's 2 weeks in a row where he's been sailing balls on the number one or number two, depending on who you talk to, receiver in the NFL. That's just not a thing you can do. And Sam Darnold went out there and did it 2 weeks in a row. But I, I don't know where that comes from. How do you go 16 games in a season, play at the best you ever have, really? I started him in fantasy a couple
Easily,
weeks, in our
easily.
league, and it was just like boom, 30 point, boom, like oh, this is awesome. He's putting up numbers. Like that game against the Packers, I thought they played really, really well too. Like the game before that Detroit game, and it's not that they're playing bad in their division against good teams. It's just the Lions, it's just the Rams, but teams don't struggle regularly against the Rams. They do occasionally, but it's not a team that you're going to go out there and be like, this is an absolute juggernaut.
So Sam Darnold this was his season. He was the 7th-ranked fantasy quarterback.
Mhm.
He had 4,319 yards, 35 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 212 rush yards for 1 rush touchdown. He was the 7th highest player in terms of fantasy with 439 fantasy points. If you take away those 4 games, that even gets better. You know what I mean? Like the numbers
Get better.
gets a lot better. It gets a lot better. So what do you do in terms of a contract? Every year, you see, you saw it when Daniel Jones, let's call him Danny Dimes, when Danny Dimes signed the contract and is now the backup, or was the backup.
He's Danny backup now, unfortunately.
But that's kind of what I got there. What do you think is going to happen in the offseason with Sam Darnold? Because we've been dancing around the question.
I let him walk. I've never been a Sam Darnold fan. You can't go out there and put up a performance like that. Not on the Minnesota Vikings. That's a team that they just don't win in the brightest lights. They just don't. Sam Darnold has had so many opportunities this season, and I think he's played well in a lot of those games. But it's kind of like me with the Cowboys. Like, are you going to win in the biggest moments? No, I don't want you on my team. Maybe it's a lot more of what have you done for me lately. I think they'll sign him. I'll say this. I think he deserves to come back given what he did. 14-3 is an awesome record, and they had a chance. In any other season, they probably would have been the number 1 seed. But do they get bounced in the divisional round? Okay.
Probably.
That's a worse draft pick. You know what I mean? Cool, but what does that do for you? I just don't see the Vikings being able to win a Super Bowl with Sam Darnold. And I'd say that most people would agree with that in a loaded NFC with the Eagles, the Lions, now the Commanders. So what would you do with him? You know what I mean? You have a very young quarterback with J.J. McCarthy coming off an injury. He's had all this time to soak it up, and he's been sitting in meeting rooms. He's been getting back on the field. Maybe you bring him back on a 1-year deal, like you said, to let J.J. McCarthy actually sit and actually kind of watch, and maybe get him some reps if Darnold goes down. But when does that first round pick come into play? What do you want to do? It depends on how you feel about JJ. If you feel really good about that guy, if you feel like he's gonna be, he's gonna go out there and he's gonna succeed, then I think you go out there and you play him.
Well, to jump in, I mean, he was the starter to start the season. They had said he was a starter, and then He got injured right before the season opener happened. Like, pretty sure he was the starter. You know what I mean? Like, he was the guy. I think he would, if I'm not mistaken, aside from like Chicago, pretty sure they were like the first team to be like, that's our guy. He's starting. You know what I mean? So I think he is their guy.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you do after the season that this guy just had, right? Like, what do you do? You nailed it. 1 year.
So,
1 year.
yeah.
But is old Sam Darnold going to come back on a 1-year contract? He's a free agent.
Is Sam Darnold going to go 14-3 again? Probably not.
I mean, I never thought he was going to in the first place. If you had a gun to my head last season, he would have been like the 38th guy I would have said in the quarterback room.
With an offense
because it's not even his backup.
With an offense like that, like you have guys everywhere, and I'll say this: the success was probably because of those guys, because you have Justin Jefferson, because you have Jordan Addison. You know, like this offensive line was blocking well up until that game, but
he had a great season.
He had a really good season, and I don't think you can take that away from him. But just those last 2 games just sit in my mind and stick out like a sore thumb, because that's the Sam Darnold that I know, and that's the Sam Darnold that I've seen for the past 5 years, except this year. You know, so it's like I'm gonna go with however many his stats in continuously throughout the years. Now I've said he's definitely gotten better. I'm not saying that he's as bad as he was like his rookie year, but it just when you're playing that poorly against the best teams in the NFL, it's like I don't really know what we have. You can't really pin it because you're like, okay, well he's good, but he's not that good, but he's not that bad either, but he's not really Lions good, but he's better than Packers good. So it's like, where do you sit even in your own division? So if they were in any other division, I might say, yeah, bring him back. Why not? But they got to play the Lions twice a year, and they're in the NFC, so they're going to see the Rams again too. So I don't know. I think either option is fine. I think either option is justified. But I think you bring him back, but you don't pay him. If you bring him back, you cannot pay him big money. It's going to be another prove it deal, but where do you sit on a prove it deal? Do you want to shell out a prove it deal? So like,
that's the thing. What team is going to shell out money to get Sam Darnold? That's the biggest question. Every year you see the quarterback market happen, and you're like, I'm sorry, they paid who? What?
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Like famously, Andy Dalton goes out and gets paid a ton. Like there's so many guys that you think it's kind of over, and they get paid more.
If he gets Baker money, 2 years, whatever Baker got paid, around like $40 million or something like that, I'd be okay with that. That's okay. Let Sam Darnold get Baker money. They're kind of like similar quarterbacks in my mind at this point. But Baker's got, I think, a playoff dub over Darnold. I guess the division opponent nonetheless, but it was the Steelers. But it's just, it's really just how you evaluate it. Playoff success, regular season success. Which one do you value more? How he played, how you look. Like, the roster's good. Let's just face the facts. That's a good roster. On paper, good roster. Why are you not getting it done against the Rams? So, I don't know. I just, if it was even a little bit more competitive, I would give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt, but it's just a lot of just that. Those 2 games just stick out horrendously. Now, granted, earlier in the year, they played the Lions pretty dang close. And Sam Darnold could get better, but he's in like his 6th year, something like that. So I don't know. It's time to put up or shut up. I think if they keep him, this next year is the year for Sam Darnold. The year, it has to be.
Well, then you're gonna have the camera pointing over to JJ McCarthy like every 5 seconds, 100%. We'll see what happens. This offseason is gonna be fun, and
it's gonna be like
we're gonna cover all of it.
It's gonna be like Kirk and Penix.
Literally, and Kirk's probably going to be a guy that's going to be out there too.
Bring him back.
Divisional round. So we've got the first game of the weekend. Again, we've got the Texans playing against the Chiefs. Right now, Kansas City's favored by 8 points. If CJ Stroud goes in there and beats Patrick Mahomes, I'll eat all of my words, because I didn't think CJ Stroud was going to make it out of the first round, but he did. I already ate my words on that one. But I'm not picking against the Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs that has a chance to three-peat. This is a team, Kansas City-wise, you can't say has flown under the radar, because they were undefeated for a long time. Taylor Swift goes to the games. Like, there's always going to be media around Kansas City now. Mahomes, again, three-peat, a three-peat.
It's never been done.
Okay, never been done, and he's not even 30. This is legacy stuff right here, and you see quarterbacks, and you see quarterbacks, you see teams, but specifically you see individual players rise to a level that in the regular season you're like, how did he get better? How did he get better? Well, this regular season, Mahomes didn't even look that good. Mm-hmm. And he only lost 2 games. He didn't play the last game. So I'd be freaking terrified if I'm going in to play Kansas City. But Houston's not terrified. They're they're a professional football team. They're from H-Town. They've played these guys before. CJ's had some success against Patrick Mahomes before. But in the playoffs, don't pick against Kansas City in the playoffs. You know what I mean? No shot. Absolute no shot. Give me KC. Kelsey's going to randomly go out there and have like 6 yards, 86 yards, touchdown. Mahomes is going to be 19. No, Mahomes is going to be 28 of 34 for like 298 and 3 touchdowns. Like it's over before it even begins. And, hey, I can eat my words. I ate a lot of them last week. A lot of people that predicted games last week ate a lot of words because none of those games were just like, what the hell happened? They get slapped in the face. But come on, man. It's Mahomes in the playoffs. What? Don't tell me you're going against him.
No, I'm going to pick Mahomes. But I think it's going to be a little bit closer than that. I don't think Texans are going to go out there and get destroyed. I think CJ just went out there and he's like, all right, I can do this. They kind of showed Texans fans that he's still him, and he won a playoff game with all the
a couple.
Yeah, well, I mean just this season, but now he's got 2. I think that's the same as Dak now, unfortunately. Same as a couple guys, unfortunately, but I think it'll be closer. That KC defense is for real though, and that's kind of what's been their cherry on top this season. So I think they're going to continue to ride them and see if they can get some success against CJ, who's kind of been down in the dumps. But if we see the CJ, the defense, at least that Houston defense that we saw against the Chargers, then that's going to be a whole different story for the Kansas City Chiefs, because they're a team that, I don't know, this whole running back thing. Like, they got Pacheco, they got Kareem Hunt. It's going to be great going into the playoffs, but it's not like they got like a Derrick Henry. You know what I mean? I think
they don't need him.
They don't need him. I agree, but I think Houston will have a little bit of success. But Mahomes, he just does things in the playoffs. It's like Andy Reid just dices him up. He just calls up these plays, and you're like, it makes you like hit your head against the wall because you're just like, this is so good. It's like, this is good football.
Quick question: how much of the Chiefs playbook do you think they play with during the regular season? Because you made up a good point, like. The plays they come out with in the playoffs, like, how the fuck, what was that?
It's like, where did that come from?
How did he have the ball when Kelsey direct snapped it? Like, how did he do that?
Just considering, how big the playbook is, it's probably, I'll say they show about 90% of it. There's still like 10% that they kind of leave up in the rafters, especially once they start getting to 12, 13, 14 wins. You're like, okay, we're making the playoffs. But if they get that number 1 bye, they probably add a whole lot of new ones, to the playoffs in that bye week. Maybe, I don't know what goes on in Andy Reid's head, but it's just
cheeseburgers.
He's like, I need cheeseburger. We got to finish this season so I can go get some In-N-Out. But
I love that guy.
Yeah, he's going to dial some stuff up. He's going to get it going, and he's a guy that wins. Andy Reid, and everywhere he's gone, he has won, and he has brought his players just absolute accolades. So he's going to be just fine against the, now 2-win CJ Stroud in the playoffs. I think Chiefs are going to get going pretty early on, and they're at home. They don't got to leave till the Super Bowl. Oh darn,
And not to mention, like you said, like I said, sorry, like we haven't even seen the best Patrick Mahomes this season. If anything, you've seen a Patrick Mahomes where you're like, when's he going to get going? When's he going to get going? When's he going to get going? Only 2 losses. You know what I mean? Now, because what do you need? Obviously, Mahomes is the X factor. Like it's Mahomes, right? They don't have Mahomes. They don't have. This isn't even a conversation. But now they have a really good defense against a really good Baltimore offense, and potential matchups. Really good Buffalo offense, right? With the quarterback play specifically, and James Cook, who's starting to get going, like we talked about. So this is scary to say, but I think the Chiefs are built to win more than they have been in previous years. With this defense, maybe not the names on paper, maybe not the names on the roster if you go back and you look, but this is the best defense they've had. Oh, and guess what? They've had not a week, weeks of rest. So, and what was the last thing I was going to say? That's right. They're at freaking home. Yeah. Like you said, they don't got to leave till the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going anywhere till the Super Bowl. Both got Chiefs. Commanders and Lions is the next game on Saturday. There's no more Monday games. Kind of crazy. Just Saturday, Sunday games now. Right now, Detroit is favored by 10, which is pretty interesting. But I'm not scared if I'm Detroit. I'm not scared because I don't think this team ever isn't going to show up. But maybe just like a little bit of fear pops in there, a little bit of fear. No, not even a little bit. Not even a little bit of fear pops in there.
23 points. 23 points is not enough to beat the Lions.
They don't. You need 40. You need 40.
They're not.
You need 40.
You want to stop the Lions on defense? Okay. Oh, who is this guy? You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't. They're going to have to put up like 38 points if they want to win this game. Almost 40.
And not to mention, but it's going to be a little challenging. It's going to be a little challenging. Now, could Jaden do it? Could Jaden Daniels do it? Maybe. Yeah, maybe for sure. You know, he's had definitely success. I'm not going to count anything against him. There's a reason this is the night game. I think this is going to be a really good game. 10 points, a touchdown and a field goal, that seems pretty reasonable to me. I think Jaden could keep this in one score. I think this game is right on. I think it's going to be between 8 and 11 points. But nobody wants to play Detroit. You're a 15-2 team who has been riddled with injuries, and you're going to be getting some of those people back. Not everybody, maybe not the biggest stars, but you're going to be getting some of those people back. And not to mention, this team also got a rest last week, and this is the team that needed the rest most in the entire season, and it wasn't even close. They shouldn't be here. Now, the story for the Detroit Lions the rest of the playoffs is simple. It's very simple. How does this roster continue to hold up? That's it. Because everything else, that box is checked. Mm-hmm. Everything else. Every other box that Detroit has is completely checked. How does this roster hold up on the injury side? That's the biggest question. Are they going to have a hard time, moving the ball against this Washington Commanders defense? No. They have 4 guys that they could go to, and they could all produce, right? And that's saying one of the running backs is injured. If David Montgomery comes back, they got 5 guys they can go to. They got 5 guys. You can't cover 5 guys. You can cover a couple, but as soon as you double cover Amon-Ra St. Brown, oh shit, J-Mo's over the middle wide open, and that safety's not going to catch him.
No.
So this Detroit team's disgusting, and I'm not picking against Detroit ever in this playoffs, and I'm not picking against KC in this playoffs. So you got my Super Bowl matchup already. Like you already got it. You know what I mean? We didn't technically do a bracket this year, now that I think about it, but that's my Super Bowl matchup right there. Are you seeing, a similar side of the coin with the Lions, just a team nobody wants to play? Or do you think maybe this is just, hey, this is nothing to lose for the Commanders? We didn't think we'd win the first round. Now we're in the second. Let's see how far we can go.
I agree. I do think there's nothing to lose. Like that's 100% true for the Commanders. You did not, expect them at the beginning of this year. I mean, what were they last year? Like 4-12 or something like that. Number 2 overall pick. Them turning around, going whatever the record is now. I think it's inverse. I think they went like 12 and
12 and
5.
5.
Yeah. But that's impressive. That's a win in itself. We talk about how the Chargers got dubs this weekend, even though they lost. We talked about the Broncos, how they got dubs, even though they lost. Same thing with the Washington Commanders. They're just the guys that win close games, but unfortunately, I don't know if this is going to be a close game. Like I don't know if this is going to be a game that Jaden's gonna like. Is this going to be a 43-40 type of game? That feels like the only way the Commanders can win this thing because we know Detroit can put up points. Like they're the best offense in the NFL and they're like a historic offense. Like they're putting up so many points, it's absurd. So, I with how other teams have played against the Commanders this season, it just doesn't look like it's going to be a whole lot of success for the Commanders on defense. Like I get it, they'll probably make a couple plays, they'll probably force a punt or two, but if Detroit's scoring on most of those drives, they're going to be taking a lot of that clock with them. They're not going to let you have a whole lot of time on the ball. They're not going to let you get these sustained drives that go down the field. Now you'll get a couple, I assume, but if Detroit's doing that every single time they get the ball, they're taking 5-6 minutes off the clock. Then that game's going to be coming to an end real quickly. And if you're Jaden Daniels and you don't have a whole lot of opportunities to get down the field and you're a rookie, and that's kind of the whole thing with rookies, it just makes me think that he's not going to have the type of success that he had against the Bucks, against some of these other teams that they played. Now, it's going to be interesting because I don't know where to pin Jaden Daniels right now, but he's definitely very good. And this Lions secondary this Lions defense as a whole is definitely very injury riddled, and we'll see how it does. But they still got a couple goons. They still got a couple guys back there. Kirby Joseph has been fantastic. I love him back there, and he's got many interceptions this year too. I think like 4 or 5, which has been fun. And he's just been like an awesome guy in that defense, as no one's really talking about. That's like, yeah, their defense is banged up, but it's like they got that next man up mentality. They got all these other guys that you don't. It's like, who the heck even is this guy? But he's getting sacks, and you're like, all right, well, whatever. So it's like, oh well. I think they're going to dial up some stuff. I mean, you watched them against the Vikings in that last regular season game for the number 1 seed, and they destroyed them. Granted, Darnold was seeing ghosts, and they should have caught a couple of those conversions on 4th down in the red zone. But even then, they still would have won. Like they would have put up like 20 something, and it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So as long as the Lions score like 30, 35 points, I think they'll be all right in this game. But I don't think the Commanders are going to just sit back and die like the Vikings did. I think they're going to actually put up a fight. I think they're going to put some points on the board. I think Jaden's going to get going. That's a hard offense to stop when you got nobody to stop them. So it's going to be huge next man up. We're going to see if they can get pressure on Jaden. If they get pressure, if that offensive line is not holding up, Jaden's not going to do a whole hell of a lot. So it's going to come down to the little things with Jaden, and it's going to come down to, I think, his play in particular, because Lions, we'll see how Brian Robinson gets going. We'll see how Austin Eckler gets going. We'll see what they do with Terry McLaurin. But I think they're very much ready. They're like, okay, we're ready for this game. I mean, they had Baker last year come out and play real well against them, but it wasn't enough. That's just kind of what you're seeing with these guys. It's like these teams that play up against the Lions in big spots, they just don't really put up enough against the Lions. It's like, okay, well, yeah, we put up like 20, 21 points. That doesn't matter. The Lions put up 40, so I don't know. It's hard to pick against the offense. I haven't picked against them really the last like a year or 2 years, and I'm not going to pick against them now. Their offense is too good. Too good. And they control they're a ground and pound team. If they get Montgomery back, they're going to be even better. And if they make the Super Bowl, they're going to get Aiden Hutchinson back, is what they're saying, if he's able to play. So he's going to get out there for that game. If they make the Super Bowl, I think Aiden Hutchinson's getting in pads, regardless of what status he's at. Because, I mean, his recovery is going great, but it's going to be a good game. I mean, I'm excited for it. But I'm curious. I want to see Jaden Daniels in the biggest spot he's ever played in. I want to see what he does. I want to see how he plays. I want to see what version of Jaden comes out. Is he going to look like a rookie? Or is he actually going to go out there and play pretty dang well? Because that's going to show you how, how respected he is. I think in the next coming season, because it'll be Jaden. He's a rookie. He's now, I think, proven talent, and let's see if he can do it against one of the best teams in the NFL.
And the Lions are going to be his biggest test to date, and it's not even going to be close. And you said a little bit earlier, Jaden's inspiring these new kind of quarterbacks, or Lamar was, and you get Jaden. I grew up watching football with Mike Vick at VT. 100%. So like there's like that, you just saw a guy running around throwing it with his left hand, and it was like, that's absurd. Like that's kind of the guy that I saw. And you have Jaden Daniels, who's the only guy that's gotten anywhere close to replicating and or beating what Lamar Jackson has done. And the only guy that Lamar was chasing was Vic, and now Lamar, I'm pretty sure, is above Vic and everything. So it's like you've got this new generation of quarterbacks, like you're saying, and it's fun to watch. And I know we're talking about the Commanders here. We'll hit the Ravens game in a second, but like specifically the quarterback, like you change your whole team, your whole system, everything for these quarterbacks. The Ravens did it with Lamar when they brought him in at the end of the first round out of Louisville. I mean, they changed their entire scheme, entire everything. They put everything on this. Jaden was similar to that. We have not seen a Commanders offense look like this in a very long time, because RG3 was the last time you were able to run these types of plays. You can't run these types of plays with Kirk Cousins. No. You can't run these types of plays with Sam Howell. You just can't. You simply can't do it. So Commanders are a fun team, and right now they're playing with house money. So we'll see how far they go. I think Jaden's a guy that's going to stick. I think that it's pretty obvious. There's no way the sophomore slump is going to be that bad. This kid's got a very high ceiling. Next matchup, we have the Rams versus the Eagles. Right now, Philly is favored by 6.5. This is a tough matchup. For me, it's Rams at Philly. So that's why I got the edge to Philly, but this game's a complete toss-up for me, because Philadelphia did win last week. They definitely did. They won by over one possession. But this Eagles team is a team, even though they're 14-3, they've got a lot of holes. And so do the Rams. The Rams absolutely have a lot of holes. But when it comes to the playoffs, it's all about who can get hot. And right now, with Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, like, I don't know if Jalen is going to out-duel, even with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on his team. I think that for the Eagles to win this game, they have to unleash the beast. Saquon's got to go. Saquon's got to go. You got to take it off. You're one win away from the conference championship. You are one win away after that from the Super Bowl. Like, he's got to go. Saquon's got to get 25 plus rushing yards, or 25 plus rushing yards. Can you imagine? 25 plus rushing attempts, no matter how this game is going, because he can break one at any stretch. And last game, he didn't even play. I mean, he did, but he didn't play as much as you thought he was going to. In the game before that, they sat him.
I thought they got him going pretty well. Again, let's be honest. He would have, that last play, he would have broken it, and he would have gone.
For sure.
He would have destroyed the stats. Like
he did sit down.
And he sat right back down. If he runs that thing, that's a completely different story. Saquon's got over 100 yards and a couple touchdowns, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's pretty expected.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's absolutely fair. But they got to do that a lot earlier. That I don't think that they can keep the Rams. Like, I don't think if the Rams stay in a one possession game and the ball's being kicked to them at the end, like that's not what you want to do. That's not what you want to do. I understand the Philadelphia's defense is one of the best in the NFL, but you got Matthew Stafford, you got Cooper Kupp, you got Puka Nacua. It's in the divisional round of the playoffs where the Rams didn't think they would even be. So another team right now that's playing with house money. And unfortunately, when you're the Eagles team and you're a good roster like this, like, I'm not saying it's a trap game because it's the playoffs. I know the Eagles are favorited, but this is a game that where if you just misstep once, I think it's going to be very costly. So I'm interested to see how this Eagles offensive line holds up against this Rams defensive line, specifically with Jared Verse, number 0 on the Rams, that just ran amok last week coming out of Florida State. And like, if that happens again, I don't know how the Eagles have success, but they got guys. The Eagles got a lot of guys, and they got a little bit more guys than the Rams do, in my opinion. So I think the Eagles do edge this one out, but I think it's going to be real close. And I think, like I said, if this is a one possession game, this is the toss up of the weekend for sure. Aside from the game that we're going to hit next, because good luck picking a freaking winner in that game.
Yeah.
So the second toss up of the weekend.
It's just, I'm not going to pick against the Eagles. I'm not going to pick against Saquon Barkley. I don't think I will. Pretty much all, maybe if they play the Lions, but like they're built to win in the playoffs. Their defense is just that good right now. I know they just lost, N'Kobe Dean, but Quinyon Mitchell, like Cooper DeJean, like these guys are starting to get going real well, and they're so young, and their defensive line is fantastic as well. Like, we hardly talk about it, considering all the star power that the Eagles have. So big play Slay, like all these guys back there, he played really well in that matchup against Green Bay, and I think he's going to continue to get going. I think I can't pick against the Eagles right now, and I think they're going to win by multiple scores. I don't think they're going to make the same mistakes that the Vikings did. I think that they're gonna get pressure on Matthew Stafford. I mean, how can you not with that type of defensive line? I get it. The Rams, they kind of overhauled their offensive line. That defense is starting to look good. That's the only part where I could see like, okay, yeah, the Rams defense starting to, Jalen having a little bit of trouble in the passing game. But like you said, like, okay, we're having trouble throwing the ball. Let's just give it to Saquon. He's going to go yard. Okay, cool. That's solid. And they have to respect the pass because it's Jalen Hurts, because it's A.J. Brown, because it's Devontae Smith. So you get Saquon going early, and I think your life is going to be easy because they're not going to have any idea of what to do later on in the game. So I like McVay. I like him a lot, and I like that defense, that young defense that they got over there in L.A. But I think if you give Saquon an opportunity, he's going to go yard. Like he's rested. He's just sitting, waiting to have one of those games in the playoffs where they need him. And it's like, oh, I get him the ball? Okay. So I think that he's just going to get continuously better throughout that game. And if you're telling me like who's going to have more success on offense, I'm going to say the Eagles. Like the Rams are good, but that Philly defense is no joke. They're starting to come on at the end of the year. They're starting to play really well. And I don't think the Rams are going to spot them a couple points like the Packers did, but I'm not picking against Saquon right now. I get it, Kyren Williams. I get it, Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. But it's not his time anymore, unfortunately. I like Stafford. He's slinging it around though. He's slinging it around. He played real well against Minnesota, but again, that's a team that they know how to beat. So we're going to go up against a team that we don't know if they know how to beat the Eagles. Like the Eagles are an absolute wagon. So they got to pull out the best. They got to pull out all the stops, and Stafford's got to play probably the best he has all season. Maybe not the best. I mean, he's had a lot of really good games this year, but Puka's got to get going. Like you got to get everyone going for the Rams if you want to win this game, and on defense too. You got to get a couple turnovers. So I just don't. I trust Philly to control the ball and control this game at home against the Rams. So I think the city of brotherly love will be loving brotherly in this game. So give me the Eagles by a couple scores.
I don't even know what that means, but I think we're both going Philly in this one, and it's pretty simple. Last matchup of the weekend. Then we're going to move on and talk about all pros. Because those came out. The Ravens and the Bills. Dude, this is the game. This is the matchup. They're going into Buffalo. Ravens are going into Buffalo.
I know who you're picking, so you should just say it already.
I don't know who I'm picking.
Yeah, you do.
I don't know. I don't know if I know who I'm picking. Here's the thing. With Buffalo being at home, it's like it would be really stupid to pick anybody against Buffalo with Buffalo being at home. But it's the freaking Ravens. Mm-hmm. And they have Derrick Henry.
And they got Derrick Henry.
Give me the Ravens.
Okay.
Give me the Ravens this week. I'm going Baltimore. I'm going to go Baltimore. And I'm going to show you why Lamar Jackson is going to win the MVP this week. He's going to go into the Bills, and he's going to win. Am I confident? think by the shakiness in my voice, not too much there. Right now, this game is a -1 favorite for Baltimore, and when this matchup came out, Buffalo was favorited. So this game's even going back and forth in Vegas. It's a 1-point game. It's not a 3-point game. It's not a 3.5-point game. It is a 1-point game, which means this is the closest game I think I've ever seen to date in the playoffs. And they both want it so bad.
They do.
And I that's why this game is the game. I honestly think, and this may be a hot take, but this is going to be my not Super Bowl, but number 2 game this playoffs is going to be this game. And then after this game, my Super Bowl is going to be whoever wins this
Yeah.
and whoever plays the Chiefs. That's my Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's it. Even if the Lions make it and it's the Lions versus the Chiefs, sorry, not going to happen. Not going to happen. It's not going to beat out those for me because like these teams have been trying to knock the Chiefs off for so long and they just never have. They never have. But they're both playing, the Ravens and the Bills are both playing the best they've ever played. So could this be the year? Who the hell knows? Maybe. But I genuinely don't know how Buffalo stops Derrick Henry. Like, I genuinely don't know that. I don't know.
I don't think they will.
If you don't stop Derrick Henry right off the rip, it's over.
Maybe.
And maybe. And
you got Josh Allen on the other side.
Yeah, I get it. I get you. I get it, and that's why I'm so excited for this game.
It's crazy.
But like, here's the thing: you saw what happened last game with the Ravens, with the Steelers. They took away Derrick Henry with the run, but then Lamar Jackson just kept the option. There was nobody to get Lamar Jackson on the other side. I don't think the game plan is going to be very similar. I thought that was crazy to see that. I mean, I'm like a fan watching. I'm like, I would make an adjustment, and it just never got made. But anyway, again, Mike Tomlin's better than I am, always will be. But like, there's no way Buffalo goes out and does that. There's no way. But they're 1 win apart from each other. These teams are in the regular season. Buffalo's won 1 more game, and you can argue that the Ravens should have won a couple more games this season if you really want to argue against Kansas City at the beginning of the year with Mr. Isaiah Likely in the toe. Unfortunately, he had the white cleats on. But complete toss-up. I know I said the Rams and the Eagles were, but this is 100% more of a toss-up than that game. The hardest game to pick of the weekend. It's a 1-point spread. So if you're betting, like that's a good thing. If you pick the winner or you pick the underdog, probably going to make some decent coin there. But I don't know, man. I cannot see the Baltimore Ravens being shut down offensively with what they did without Zay Flowers, without even practically throwing the ball that much last week. And I'm sorry, I said it last week. Lamar's going to win the MVP, in my opinion. And when we go to the All-Pro voting, I think it's going to solidify the fact that he's going to win the MVP. But what do you got on this Bills team? Because I know there ain't no way in hell you're picking Baltimore.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm going Bills, but I don't think they're going to be able to stop Derrick Henry. I don't think they're going to be able to stop Lamar Jackson. And I think this is going to be a track meet. I think we've seen Buffalo do it this year against the Rams. Now, granted, they lost that game. And then they had another track meet, I think, in the next game after that. You know what I mean? So it's not foreign to the Bills to go out and score points. Like, we know when Josh Allen is down, he gets better. You know, when Josh Allen is behind in the scoreboard, he goes and gets a touchdown. That's what he does. That's how he's played the entire year. That's, why he's my MVP. But I don't think that Josh Allen's just going to play at home as poorly as he did last week. I don't think that Josh Allen's going to show up. I think he's got the flow rocking. He's married. He's about to get some accolades this offseason. And I think that he's going to go out there and he's going to beat the Ravens. That offense is so hard to stop right now. And in this season just alone, I think the Ravens have kind of had their worst version of their defense that you've seen in recent memory. Granted, it's been the best version of their offense, but, it's kind of like a trade-off a little bit on that side. Their secondary really hasn't been that great, especially in middle parts of the season. We'll see how they continue to get going on here, but I think Josh is going to go out there and he's going to have a field day. It's going to be interesting to see how they get James Cook going against that D line, because that is like the best defensive line in the NFL. If you want to argue with Philly, maybe, you know what I mean. So it's going to be tough to get Cook going, but I think if they get him going, that game's going to be, they can control the time possession. They're at home. Really, what this comes up to is I think the team that wins this game is the team that got home field advantage in this matchup. Unfortunately, with the 2 going up against the 3, like you don't want to play in Buffalo. We said it earlier in this episode. You don't want to go to Buffalo to play because Josh Allen has just a hold on that whole place. So I think he's going to play real well. I don't know if the Ravens. I think it's going to be a really, really exciting matchup. I think we're going to see touchdowns on top of touchdowns, but it's going to come down to the team that has to punt. Unfortunately, it's going to come down to the team that, gets just fewer opportunities just in general. And the Ravens do a nice job of controlling the clock. So it's going to be a whole lot of Josh Madness, I think, in a little bit of this way. He's just going to be slinging that thing down the field. And there's not going to be, I think, a real, like, how do you cover guys for like 15 seconds? You know what I mean? You don't. And that's what Josh Allen does so well. And granted, Lamar does it well, very well also. But maybe we just take the winner of this game and give them the MVP. Maybe this is just the matchup. They're going head to head. Why not? But I think I think the voting's already been cast. So
it has.
So it's not like it's going to actually happen. But no, man, it's going to be interesting. I think Josh will win the MVP. I think it's kind of BS that he's not going to win it because he played one less game than Lamar just because he got a bye. But or because he got the playoffs didn't matter at that point. But at this point, it is what it is, and he can go and win a Super Bowl if that's what he wants. But I think Josh is going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder just because he's at home, and I think that's just going to give him that extra momentum. And like I said, I think it's going to be like 43-38. It's going to be a high-scoring game. But usually when I think that, it's going to be like 20-16, and everyone's going to suck. But I don't know, man. It's going to be fun, though. I think this is Sunday night, too. And then we have an absolute banger on Monday. But
I don't think we don't have there's not a Monday game.
There's not NFL on Monday.
Oh, yes, we do. I was like, I'm sure there's not an NFL game on Monday. Yes, we do. We do have the national championship on Monday. But yeah, I mean, that's like, I can't argue against any of that because again, this game is quite literally like a 1-point favorite on ESPN. Like that shows you how close the nation is on this game. And this truly is a game that, yeah, it could be a shootout for sure. And whoever limits their mistakes more, if there's a couple costly turnovers in this game, I think that could decide the outcome of this game. I think that's how close these teams are. I think that's how close these teams are in the top of the AFC. And right now, I think I think Kansas City, you can't take them out of number 1, and you can interchange Buffalo and Baltimore at number 2 and number 3. So that's the best teams going against each other right now, in my opinion, and it's going to be a hell of a game. But
people, that is why home field advantage is so important in the playoffs. So important,
especially when your patrons are outside breaking tables and getting absolutely demolished before the game. Like that place is going to be rocking. There's going to be snow going everywhere. Yeah. Got to make it out to a Buffalo game and got to make it out to a Buffalo freaking tailgate. Just want to walk through the parking lot. You know what I mean? Just want to see that. I will not partake because I cannot continue to break my body down. No way. All right, all pro talk. We're just going the first team all pros here. Quarterback Lamar Jackson, Baltimore. Makes it over Josh Allen and over Mr. Joey Burrow. Not saying that is for sure going to be the MVP, but if you look at the trend, you look at that's kind of falls in that way. So Lamar Jackson makes it over, and you've already said it. We've already talked about it. You said one less game. That's kind of the explanation you have on your side, and hey, that's you look at the stats. We did it last episode. Go take a listen. It's one game. It is quite literally one game, but the rushing yards that Lamar has and just the scale of everything is just it's crazy. It's just you can't take anything away from either of these guys. There's only one guy that gets it on the quarterback side. Just how it flows. Just how it goes, right? Running back, Saquon Barkley. out of Philadelphia. You know, it was between like him and Derrick Henry. I think it was pretty obvious that Saquon was going to get the nod there, considering he was like third from what I saw at the end of the year with MVP voting. But nothing there that I need to write home about. Fullback Patrick Hart out of Baltimore.
Nice.
Keep a rocking, Mr. Patrick Picard. You're a legend.
Hell yeah.
This is the oh shit moment of the episode right here. The first team All-Pro tight end. Maybe George Kittle? No. Brock Bowers, Raiders.
He deserves it.
This guy, I mean, this is what did we
like 1,100 receiving yards, dude.
Dude, if you listen to the pod, franchise tight end. I don't say that I don't say that often. I do not say franchise a lot. Franchise tight end. This guy was a franchise tight end coming out of Georgia. He was the clear-cut number 1 overall pick after his second season in Georgia. You could argue after his first. And he just continues to get better. Brock Bowers, unbelievable season. You already said it. 1,100, 1,000+ receiving yards. If he was not there on that Raiders team, I'm not sure they complete more than 5 passes a game.
They probably don't win. They probably win like 2 less games too. You know what I mean? Like
minimum.
Like they're like.
I think they've only won like 3.
You know, that's what I'm saying. it's a real bad roster. I mean, he's got at the beginning of the year like Gardner Minshew, like Aiden O'Connell, and I don't even know who the third guy was. You know, who came in to be a backup, and like a losing a very very bad team, and he's just first team All Pro tight ends, easy 11
as a rookie, dude,
setting records for tight ends. Just he's electric. You know, he's absolutely electric. He's had multiple games this year with like over I don't even know how many fantasy points, but easily the best tight end this year.
Yeah, and for the foreseeable future, the Raiders are not going to let him go. They let their head coach go. They let their quarterback go. They let their wide receiver. They let everything go this season. Wide receivers, Jamar Chase is number 1.
Easy.
Justin Jefferson, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown, which shouts out to Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I'm surprised. Yeah. I mean, I don't know their stats or anything, but I'm surprised A.J. Brown didn't get an All-Pro nod. But he has been absent a couple games, and I think that's kind of the reason why.
It's also, I mean, this is only the first team. But Jamar Chase, that's obvious. Justin Jefferson, maybe not necessarily the season that you're used to seeing, but it was pretty obvious every time he was out there. He dominated everybody.
Really well. Still played
really well.
Like, go look at his
really
stats,
well.
And that's like a down year for Justin.
Yeah, and that's absolutely absurd. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, it was interesting because you didn't see a ton of production. You didn't think you were seeing a ton of production from him, but it was just so consistent with Amon-Ra. And so for me, it's like I totally understand that nod too. Left tackle, you got Tristan Wirfs out of Tampa Bay.
Yep.
That is just duh. You know what I mean? Like that's yeah. He was jumping out of a pool when he got drafted. Called that one.
The thing too is, I told you. I mean, I think this guy would be All Pro at left tackle and right tackle, depending on which one he wanted to play, because he's played both, and I think he's made. I want to say he's made Pro Bowls in both. I could be wrong, but he's been recognized, I think, for playing both in some way, which is dumb. Which is dumb. You shouldn't just be able to walk over to the other side and be like, this is kind of easy. So.
At the NFL level, too. Unbelievable. Then left guard, Joe Thuney out of Kansas City. Center, Creed Humphrey out of Kansas City.
Nice.
Right guard, Quinn Miners out of Denver. And right tackle, Penei Sewell out of Detroit.
Denver. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So
no Philly guys up there, unfortunately, though. What's going on with that?
No, aside from Saquon.
Well, I mean, offensive line-wise, I thought they had a really, really good season. So it's kind of a surprise not to give one of them the nod, as opposed to like some guys out of KC. I'm not saying that they're like worse or anything. I'm just saying, 2,000-yard rusher kind of speaks for itself a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of shocked that a guard doesn't kind of go in there, but the up and down, I'm not going to say up and down play of the Eagles, but I would say specifically with the offensive line in Philly, though that has been up and down. You know what I mean? Like you've had guys in there because Philly drafts guys like very interesting guys. Like they draft like, guys are like maulers almost. Like guys that at the point of attack, like a I can't even say his last name, but like a Maluga or whatever his name is. Like if you engage with that guy, like you don't want his hands on you right away. You want to try to do something to get the vice grips off of you. But for Philly, it just seems like these guys are so vice grippy. You know what I mean? And then you have, long time, you had Jason Peters sitting there at the left side, right? You have so many of these guys, Lane Johnson that was sitting there too. So like just big, just plugs, just stick them there, and you're not going to move them, and they're not going to move a ton in terms of blocking up the field, but they're going to control that line of scrimmage, and that's how they're going to have success. Well, this year, you have a Saquon Barkley, so you get to change the play of the offensive line a little bit, and for me, that's been my biggest, plus aside from Saquon almost breaking all the records, like, and some defensive side of the ball that we're going to get to on the Philly side, but like, there's so many bright spots on this Philadelphia team, and like the offensive line, the fact that they don't even get mentioned, like you said, and they had a 2,000-yard rusher is, hey, maybe it's a team that does take down Detroit. Who knows? On the defensive side of the ball, edge rushers, Myles Garrett, you kind of knew that was coming.
Yeah.
And Trey Hendrickson from Cincinnati.
Deserved. He
deserved that as well.
He should be the number one, like 100%. If there's like an option for, like a ranking of them this year, 100%. Trey has been fantastic. He's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year. So.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure how close they were in the voting, but I think that's good. And then Cameron Hayward, interior lineman, so defensive tackles. Cameron Hayward was first out of Pittsburgh, and then Chris Jones was there out of Kansas City. That's obvious. Chris Jones is going to be there every single year. Yeah, Cameron Hayward, like,
he's going to be there.
When was the last time you've heard him have a bad season? Especially with you. You watch that division all the time. Like, that guy's always there, always in the backfield, always giving there.
Nasty.
Yeah, Cameron Hayward's nasty. This one is like, I scouted this guy a lot out of Wisconsin, and Zach Bond.
Yeah, dude.
They have transformed this player. Primarily like a pass rusher going after the quarterback, and now they drop him back in coverage all of a sudden. That usually doesn't happen, right? And then they sprinkle a little bit of pass rush in there as well. So it's just the scheme that they have him playing is incredible. What do you? I mean, I know you've watched him a ton. Like, this guy's taking a step.
He can do it all. Like, he genuinely can play anywhere on the field on defense, just because his coverage ability alone is that elite. And he hits like a goddamn truck, So, like you said, he's experienced playing at both levels too. So it's just, he sees the field a lot differently than a normal player, since he can play pretty much anywhere, and he knows kind of like the assignments of a lot of different players too. So definitely a massive part of that Philadelphia Eagles defense. And I don't know if he was up there with tackles, or if he was first in tackles, but he was definitely like top 3, if not top 1 or 2. So kudos to him. His name kind of just like flew out of nowhere, and in fantasy, you're like, this guy's averaging like 12 tackles a game. All right, this sounds cool. So it's like that's where we're going. He's been fantastic. He's just been making plays all over the place on a young Philly defense that has needed like kind of like a spearhead to kind of go along with it on that defense. And I think he's been that pretty much to a T for the Eagles. So pretty nice.
A guy that's been there a lot, Fred Warner out of San Francisco, and then lastly, Roquan Smith out of Baltimore. That's enough. Yeah, totally understand those two. Cornerbacks, you've got Patrick Surtain II out of Denver. I mean, he, for a lot of the year and for a lot of last year, hell, since he's been in the league, he's been top 1, top 2, top 3. You can interchange them. And then Derek Stingley Jr. Out of Houston takes the second one. If I'm not mistaken, last year I think Sauce Gardner was first or second team All-Pro. This is the first year that you're not really seeing him. He didn't have a season that you were kind of expecting him to have, but Derek Stingley went above and beyond this season. And you and I have talked about him at length at this show. Last cornerback, they have a slot cornerback in there. Our boy, sorry, not our boy. You hate Baltimore. My boy, Marlon Humphrey. I freaking love that guy. I know you like using him on Madden too, because he's a wizard somehow on the hit stick. I can figure that out with him on Madden all day. But came out of Alabama, Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, Derek Stingley out of LSU. You got all these SEC guys at the top of the defensive backs. Man, the physicalness of Marlon Humphrey's game is what makes him so fun to watch. At the line of scrimmage, at the point of attack, I mean, he is just in your freaking face,
Mhm.
and he's not getting out of your face. Derek Stingley plays a little bit more smooth, plays a little bit with more flow. Marlon Humphrey, it's just boom, attack, ball. You know what I mean? And then you have Patrick Surtain that does, you said Zach Bond can play anywhere. Patrick Surtain can do anything at the cornerback position. I mean, that guy is a franchise piece in Denver. It's not going to go anywhere for a very long time. So I'm completely on board with those cornerbacks and slot cornerback. You got any gripes on those?
No, it seems pretty well deserved.
Well deserved there. Safeties, Kirby Joseph.
That's what I'm saying.
Nice. You got that one earlier. Kirby Joseph out of Detroit and Xavier McKinney out of Green Bay. Not too shabby. Not too shabby with those. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't think that any of those are big question marks. I think I kind of agree with every single one of those. You know what I mean? I know that we talked a little bit earlier about the Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, but it was one game. Moving on, after the NFL All Pros, let's move it to a little bit of head coaching.
Let's
We've
actually
got
skip this segment. Let's skip this segment because this is something we can talk about a lot, and we are at an hour and 45. Just a FYI. So I think we get onto the college football national championship and round it out with the prospect profile because we are not done, even in the slightest, with NFL coaching. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. We'll get more in depth with it next episode.
The college football playoff. We've got Ohio State versus Notre Dame. And a lot of the country right now is pulling with Ohio State. And a lot of people aren't giving Notre Dame a whole hell of a lot of chance here. Ohio State looks real good. It's pretty easy to kind of jump on that bandwagon, and I think I'm going to. Ohio State, I've said it throughout the season, has the best roster in college football, and I don't think that that's going to stop against Notre Dame. You said it last week. The winner out of that game, out of them in Texas, won the national championship. Completely agree with you, and I'm going Ohio State here. And I know you're happy because A&M might not be there, but your Buckeyes made it to the national championship. So have fun, pick your Buckeyes to win the national championship. That must feel pretty good, huh?
Yeah, I mean, obviously going with the Buckeyes, but just because, I'll say for Notre Dame, I don't know if I think Riley Leonard's a dog quarterback for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, but I just don't know if he's gonna be able to have this type of success against these guys that Ohio State has on defense. This is the highest paid roster. We've heard it all season long. This is the best roster on paper in college football. This is the most. There's the most money on this roster in college football. Talking about Ohio State, they have expectations up high above the moon. You know what I mean? But that's kind of where they're playing right now. They destroyed Tennessee, made them look silly. They destroyed the best team in the country in Oregon, a team that they played very, very closely in their previous matchup. And they went out there, and I would say that they destroyed, maybe not destroyed Texas, but I would say that they put a little whoop ass on them, especially towards the end of that game. And if you have that type of pressure against Notre Dame, I don't think that game is very long, unfortunately. I don't think that it's going to get a whole lot of, traction with that Notre Dame offense. That's the big thing going in. I think we know that Ohio State can score pretty much when they need to, and that's kind of how that Texas game went out or played out. They scored when they needed to. Wasn't the best they played all year, but in the big moments, they had their guys. The stars showed up. That roster, the most expensive roster in college football, looked like what it was supposed to be. So I think that was the biggest test. And I'm not saying Notre Dame is like a step down, but I'm just saying they're going to have to put up a lot on offense, I think, in order to compete with Ohio State. Now, granted, to their point, Notre Dame has a very, very, very good defense. We'll hit one of their cornerbacks in the next segment, but these guys are goons. So we're going to see how good this defense is against, in my opinion, an NFL caliber receiving core with, Ibuka, Jeremiah Smith, and Cardell Tate. So these guys are going to go. It's not going to – could it be to Ibuka? Sure. Could it be to Jeremiah Smith? He got locked down in the semifinals, but who did they go to? They went to Ibuka. They went to Tate. I thought Carnell Tate had a lot of really, really good plays in that game. They went to the tight end too, the guy with the hair and the 88 number. So you don't see him a lot getting, but they got stars. They got guys like they have people. They're just waiting to get their chance at Ohio State, and just like, oh, Jeremiah Smith's getting tripled. All right, we got a Buka first down. You know what I mean? So we got Judkins. Let him just absolutely maul somebody. Let Henderson get a screen pass and take it to the house for 75 yards. You know what I mean? So play calling, Chip Kelly's been fantastic this year, especially in the playoffs. The only blemish he had was that Michigan game. And honestly, you look back at it now, that might have been the best thing that happened to Ohio State this season, was losing like they did to Michigan, because they turned around and they played Tennessee and they look like a completely different team. So I think Ohio State's got this one by a couple scores. And I can't see Notre Dame getting that much consistency in offense, just given how Ohio State's defense has played, how they've been able to get to the quarterback against these teams that have, super duper good offenses. And it's like they made Tennessee look silly. They made, Oregon look silly, which is like they have goons over there in Oregon. So I don't know, man. It's gonna be interesting. I want to see Notre Dame kind of establish their brand of football. That short kind of passing game, that short kind of game, drive their way down the field, take a lot of time off the clock, get some possession, just bleed the clock. And that's how you're going to win that game if you're Notre Dame. And you cannot let Ohio State beat you over the top, because they will, and they will continue to do it until you stop them. So I don't know if you really fancy your chances with a one-on-one with Jeremiah Smith or one of the other guys, but they're going to have to do something to stop those guys. But this might be the best team in the nation to compete against that receiving core with the talent that they have on defense, with all their guys for Notre Dame. So obviously picking Ohio State by multiple scores, but I think it could be a lot closer of a game than people are imagining, just because of that stout Notre Dame defense. And they just kind of keep defying expectations. It's like, oh, could Boise could Penn State beat Notre Dame? I picked them too because they're Big Ten squad. I thought the offense would get going, but they made that quarterback look really, really human. And we've seen Will Howard look really human at points this season, is kind of the point that I want to bring there too. So I'm not saying that Notre Dame is going to get destroyed in this game. I think there's a chance they win it. I really do. But they have to play lights out. Their defense has to play to the level that we expect them to, and they got to shut down the Ohio State receiving core. Because, like I said,
three first-rounders,
3 first-round picks, a lot of 5 stars in that core, and that's not even mentioning the backfield. So they're going to have a lot to deal with, but if they can shut down that receiving core, I think that game gets a whole lot easier and a lot more one-dimensional for Ohio State. And like we said, we saw what happens when you shut down their number one in Jeremiah Smith. It's kind of a slog. They're not able to get a lot of production as much as they want, but they relied on their running game against Texas and the screen game, stuff like that. Just these little dink and dunk plays that got them into position. So we'll see what happens. But no, man, I got the Buckeyes, and I think they do pretty well.
And you nailed it. You've got multiple future first-round picks on the wide receiver side. You've got, Travion could go anywhere as high as the second. He could go into the fourth. Their other running back as well is going to be second to fourth. Like, you've got all of these guys first, like above round 3 grades. You know what I mean? And that's just absurd to have as many as they have. They're not all obviously draft eligible at the same time, so they'll keep a lot of these guys. But there's just too many pieces on the Ohio State side for me to pick against them. And if you made all this way to lose to Notre Dame in the national championship, then Notre Dame deserves it. Right? Like, this is the best team in the country, and Ohio State right now, to me, has the best roster in the country, and Notre Dame has had the most recent success due to, you can't even say that they've relied on stuff that they've done, because they're running backs. That's what they've relied on, is their running backs, and Love's been hurt, but he still played pretty well. I don't know if Love is going to have anywhere near the type of success that he had in the last game, and I don't know how banged up he is. So that's going to be the biggest question going into this one. But Ohio State as well on this side. Last segment of this episode, because like Tanner mentioned, we're coming up on 2 hours. We have a prospect profile, and I waited to keep this one. Watched about 20 guys so far. Every week we're going to continue to drop these things. But this week is the cornerback for Notre Dame, Benjamin Morrison. 6 foot 190. He's a junior. Draft grade for me right now is a late first round with kind of an asterisk on it because it's so early in this process. I'm going to watch so much more tape of these guys, but my draft projection for Morrison is going to be a mid to late first round. This season he's not going to be playing this game. He had a significant hip injury that ended it and essentially declared for the draft like right afterwards. But he lined up mostly at the corner position like you would think of a cornerback would. But he did add in some slot and box looks at times. I'm impressed with this player's ability to stop the run, especially at the cornerback position. At times, Morrison reminds me of a safety. He seems a bit more comfortable, stopping the run sometimes in coverage. But overall, in coverage, I do think he's more comfortable covering in zone. But he did play man at times too. A great prospect at the next level, and someone in college who had great success against opposing quarterbacks, especially against their passer ratings, meaning the quarterbacks had very, very low passer ratings when they were throwing against this kid. He's an interesting prospect because, like I said, the coverage ability is a bit raw at the corner position, which you don't see a ton of, but the hitting ability is pretty solid. But Morrison, to me, probably a first round pick. I'd be pretty shocked if he doesn't get taken in the first round, but I could see him going anywhere from the mid to late. But that's all the college football we got this week, and all the football we got this week. And next week we're gonna hit the playoff matchups in the NFL. We're gonna talk national championship, and we're gonna start diving into these prospects a little bit more. Because again, I got a lot of guys that I've already watched and can't wait to share everything with you guys. So thanks for all the love. See everybody next week. Tanner, let's do it again.
Go watch. You know what I'm going to say. The National Basketball Association. I'm about to go do it right now.
That's why he wants to get off the episode, folks. See ya.
Maybe. Bye.